Clifton Caldwell, Vice President of the Meat Cutters Union.
David Livingston, Vice President, Distributive Workers of America.
Can you tell us basically the highlights of your testimony before the committee?
Well, the important message or the important discussion we had was to relate to them the conversations we had with govt, who is the Supreme Advisor of the Paris Conference from the North Vietnam side. And we dealt at great length with the kind of formula which govt thinks would be a solution to the present military activities.
What solution is that, sir?
Well, it has to do with really 2 points. He says we're much closer to a peace settlement than what one might think, or at least we're closer, because he says while there are 9 points, 2 of them are the important ones. One has to do with the setting of a date for the withdrawal of our military forces, the creation of a ceasefire, and the return of our prisoners. That date has never been set by our government, never agreed to, apparently. Number 2 is a political settlement, which has to do with the setting up of a kind of a coalition government, arrangements being made for a later date for elections, and the dismantling of the repressive apparatus of the present coup government. And this, out of this procedure, these steps, would come, in their opinion, a non-communist government in South Vietnam, an independent and neutral government in South Vietnam. And this, they seem to think, is an honorable and fair way to end the war in South Vietnam. He emphasized, number 1, that they have no interest in humiliating in any way the United States government. They're very desirous of peace, and they want peace so that they can have a new and different relationship with America, a relationship of friends and cooperation.
In spite of everything that's going on, was quite conciliatory. govt said in at least 5 different ways how much they want peace, considering that they have suffered the most. It's easily to understand that it's they who want peace the most. And we wanted the Senate to know how conciliatory he was.
I think you might add also just one thing, that they want a compromise settlement, and they set forth the terms as Mr. Gibbons indicated. But they also made clear that if no compromise is forthcoming, they'll go out and fighting for an indefinite period of time. We think 10, 20, 25 years until there is what they consider a peaceful settlement.
Gentlemen, you have examined these proposals, I assume, closely. Could you tell us in what specific ways they differ from the final American proposal of Henry Kissinger?
The final American proposal, for instance, does not name a date. It does not provide for the dismantling of the repressive apparatus of the current coup government. It does not provide for an independent and neutral South Vietnam. Always in the back of our minds is 2 questions: continued influence and our so-called prestige, which, yes, they will release the American prisoners of war the minute that we set a final date for the withdrawal of our total forces. The ceasefire will be part of that, and as the last soldier leaves, so will our last American prisoner.
When they spoke
this is not a separate deal, however. It is linked definitely with the solution of the political problems. They are very anxious. They have nothing against our prisoners. We talked to 2 of our prisoners. They seemingly are in good health. They seemingly are being treated well. And they seemingly, their only need seems to be that they need more books, especially books on language, because they sit around trying to learn a second language while they've got time over.
They asked you, what were your impressions?
They not only asked about it when we saw a lot of the bomb damage, but we also just showed them a moving picture, which is about 40 minutes of bombing activities on the part of the American Air Force, taken from the side of the North Vietnamese.
Were you surprised by the offensive?
No.
No, we had a suspicion it was going to take place because of one of our briefings, when we talked about the possibilities of peace, and we were talking in terms of peace by November before the elections, because we told them that the American administration was probably very anxious to settle before the elections. They said that regardless of whether Mr. Nixon is elected or not elected, unless the aggressors are expelled from the country, they will continue to fight. He says that among the factors which will influence the peace settlement will be the developments on the international front, developments on America's domestic front, the growth of the peace movement, and third, the developments on the military front in South Vietnam. And that's what we're seeing today.
On what basis, in terms of the political settlement, did they indicate to you this neutral government, which they envision being a part of in South Vietnam, would be non-communist?
Well, they said there would be part of that tripartite government would be the South Vietnam current government, less through. Secondly, they said another section would be the Viet Cong, which is not all communist. This is the PRG, Provisional Revolutionary Government of South Vietnam, which is not totally communist. And third, those remnants of citizens who are either in jail, in exile, or are suppressed at the moment, they would come to the front, and I would assume that would be part of that would be the Buddhist movement, the disabled veterans and other forces in South Vietnam which have
political prisoners.
Yeah, political prisoners from the prison camps.
May I ask each of the three of you a question on the basis of what is happening right now, the offensive in Vietnam? What reaction would you like to see on the part of the U.S. government? May I ask each of you that?
All right. Well, number one, I think we are choosing and we are continuing the worst possible alternative, which is the increasing of the bombing and the extension of our military activity. I think this is a endless, senseless procedure to follow.
It's an endless, senseless procedure, and it also solidifies the North Vietnamese and makes them all the more determined. We found that in spite of all their hardship, the more pressure we put on, the more determined they are to pursue the war.
I would add only this, that we are offered a coalition government which is neutral, independent, and clearly non-communist. Now, there may be some risks in accepting that, but the risks of accepting that are much less than the risks of expanding the war, bombing North Vietnam again, and escalating this senseless and horrible war which has been ravaging Vietnam, but ravaging our country almost as much.
Mr. Livingston, Mr. Caldwell, from what you could determine, how did the committee respond to what you had to say?
They were deeply interested. They show their great concern. They too seek avenues of peace. They hate to see the thing re-escalated, and they're hopeful that a solution will be found, a peaceful solution will be found. We are hopeful that in spite of everything that's happening, that the message we brought back from Le Duc Tho will be taken seriously, and that some kind of negotiation would commence.
From what you said, the offer seems to be the same that the communists have offered in the past and been rejected by the administration. Did you see any new flexibility in the communist position?
Dr. Kissinger didn't seem to take that view exactly. He was very moved by the fact that our conference was with Le Duc Tho, the chief Vietnamese negotiator with whom he met privately, and the fact that in response to a question by Mr. Gibbons, whether there was any message, whether he had any message for Dr. Kissinger or President Nixon, he said, please tell them everything that I said. Now, you're dealing with nuances. We were impressed with the fact that they reiterated over and over again that they want a peaceful settlement. They will go on fighting, they will go on indefinitely, but they prefer a peaceful settlement. Dr. Kissinger seemed to think there was a significance to our bringing that message back.
We brought the message back, not because we felt that there were significant changes, but that we felt they should be the judge of that. We knew that Le Duc Tho's message was serious because of the way he presented it and the fact that he gave it to 3 American labor leaders. But we knew that the decision as to how important it was and how it would affect the situation had to be made by Dr. Kissinger or by the President.
When they mentioned withdrawal of all American forces as one precondition, were they talking about air power in the general theater as well?
Yes,
Yes.
they were.
They were talking
They're
about
talking about
logistics.
complete
They're
withdrawal.
talking about advisors. They're talking about power from the battleships offshore, and they're talking about the Air Force itself.
Was there any attempt to link